स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। So as you know, we will now start the practice part of the yoga philosophy which we have been studying. We already have a good idea of the nature of the mind. We've had about 6 or 7 discussions. Then we saw that how Swami Vivekananda has propounded and also proved that yoga is a science like any other science. So we have discussed in the last 2 talks just a little recapitulation of that. We saw that all the religions of the world have been built upon one universal and adamantine foundation of all our knowledge, which is direct experience. Without experience, there cannot be any knowledge. So the teachers of all the religions, with one voice, they say that they have seen God, they have seen their own souls, and what they have seen, they preach. And all the quarrels in the name of religion take place only because people don't go to the fountainhead. They don't realize that it is experience which matters, and they are content only to give a mental assent to all the customs they have heard about. So that religion is a science we have already seen, and the teachers of this science of yoga therefore declare that religion is not only based upon the experience of ancient times, but that no man can be actually religious or spiritual until he has had the same experiences himself. And yoga is the science which teaches us how to get these experiences. So the fundamental thing to remember is that we have to experience truth for ourselves. And when we have grasped it, when we have realized it, felt it within our heart of hearts, then alone the Vedas say that all our doubts will vanish, all darkness will be dissipated, and all crookedness be made straight. So this science proposes to put before humanity a practical and scientifically worked out method of reaching this truth, that is, gaining these experiences for ourselves. And like each science, this science also has its own method of investigation. So here also, if we really want to verify whether what the saints and sages have taught is true or not, we have to work faithfully using the prescribed methods which they have shown to us. And yoga, according to yoga, what is that method? That method is analyzing the internal world. Yoga says that the power of attention which we are always giving to things outside, which we are always giving to outside world, if that power of attention is properly guided and directed towards the internal world in a completely opposite direction, then with that power of attention we can analyze our own minds, and that power of concentration will illumine facts for us, because the powers of the mind are like rays of the light dissipated, but when they are concentrated they illuminate. And that concentrated mind is the only means of knowledge. With a scattered mind, no knowledge is possible either of the external world or the internal world. And what is the use of that knowledge? It's got the highest use, that it will take away all our miseries, all our problems forever. That is the greatest use. All our conflicts, depression, doubts, everything will go once and for all. So it is the highest use. So this much we have just seen in the last two discussions. So as we had said, that after this comes the practice part, the practice of yoga. So today we will just deal with some absolutely the first steps. So I will just share an image so that the subject matter of today's discussion can be put in brief. So here you can see so today's discussion, here we will see that Swami Vivekananda first tells us what is the difference between Hatha Yoga and Raj Yoga. We will discuss that. Then he emphasizes the importance of practice. Then he tells us what are the obstacles to the practice of yoga. Then we will see some basic rules regarding this practice. And finally, just a glimpse today we will have of the 8 limbs of yoga. That is, yoga, as some of you know, is called Ashtanga Yoga. Ashta means 8, Anga means limbs, accessories, whatever you say. So what are these? We will just have a introduction today, and then of course next time we can go into a little detail. So this will form the topic of our discussion today. So first, clearing up the confusion about what yoga is, the yoga we are discussing. Now, especially in the West, we have many books and all, and they pronounce it yoga. That is not correct. It is not yoga. They cannot pronounce it properly, that's why. The word is yoga. And these books which tells us about the various postures only, those are not a part of Raj Yoga, because they deal only with the body. That is also yoga, but of a different kind. What is the name of that yoga? That is called Hatha Yoga. But the field is different. So Hatha Yoga deals only with the physical body. Its aim is to make the physical body very strong, free from disease, and help people to live a long life, etc. But we have nothing to do with it here, because the practices of Hatha Yoga do not lead to much spiritual growth. And many of these asanas, etc., you will find in many books, placing the body in different postures. But the object in these is physical, not psychological. So the aim of this branch of yoga, of Hatha Yoga, is to make human beings live long, health is the chief idea, the one goal of the Hatha Yogi. So that yogi is determined not to fall sick, and he never falls sick if he performs those asanas, etc. regularly. So Swami Vivekananda says, I quote, he lives long, 100 years is nothing to him, but that is all. A banyan tree lives sometimes 5,000 years, but it is a banyan tree and nothing more. That is Swamiji says. So if a man lives only long, but he has no spiritual growth at all, he is only a healthy animal. That's all. But one or two postures or one or two simple exercises of Hatha Yoga can be useful. Suppose we are having some ailment of the body, so those exercises can help us. But what Swamiji wants to say that if we put all the emphasis only on that and don't proceed further, I mean, body should be healthy, that is there, we will see. But if we stop there, then we won't have any spiritual progress at all. So that is the thing. That is the difference between Hatha Yoga and the yoga which we are studying. Those 4 yogas, that Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, those are different from only these postures, etc. Because the aim of these 4 is spiritual growth, while the aim of Hatha Yoga is only physical, how to keep the body healthy and all that. Now, whether in Hatha Yoga or Raj Yoga or any yoga, anything in the world, practice is absolutely necessary. That is the second thing which Swamiji says. So I quote him, he says, you may sit down and listen to me by the hour every day, but if you do not practice, you will not get one step further. It all depends on practice. We never understand these things until we experience them. Like if you memorize the whole cookery book, cook this and that, but you won't get the taste of even one dish till you go and practice and cook something. So only memorization is absolutely useless. It won't satisfy our hunger. Similarly here, if we don't practice, we won't experience anything. And if we don't experience anything, our minds will remain as before. There will be no change. We may become big scholars or something, but that is all. So that is why Swamiji says we'll have to see and feel for ourselves. Simply listening to explanations and theories will not do. And sometimes it is an obstacle also. So listening to big lectures of Jnana Yoga and Brahman and all that, we will come out and think that we have all become great spiritual people. But it is all zero. It is all talk. That is the thing. So this is the first thing. And then about the obstacles to practice, Swami Vivekananda mentions 2 primary obstacles. So here the position of the body, I mean this gross body, hands, legs, this body is very important for practice. So in this discussion that also will be clear, that how important this body is and how it is related to our practice of yoga. So the first obstruction, as we can all guess, is an unhealthy body. If you are continuously sick, any person who is continuously sick can't even perform his worldly duties. So let alone the practice of yoga, that is far, far away. So that is why first obstruction Swami Vivekananda mentions is that an unhealthy body. If the body is not in a fit state, the practice will be obstructed. Therefore, we have to keep the body in good health. So, when we discussed the principles of Hatha Yoga, that only physical fitness is stressed upon. This does not mean that we can let go of that side. We have to keep the body fit. So he says we have to keep the body in good health. We have to take care of what we eat, what we drink, what we do. Taking some regular walks and some other exercises, etc. Those are very much necessary, because after all, the body is a machine. So if you keep one machine in a room and close that room and don't even any item, any electronic things, they say if you just keep it there without using it, it will be damaged, it won't work anymore. The body is also like that. We have to keep it fit by good diet and exercises. But he says that is all. Keep the body fit. That is all. Nothing further of the body. If it is fit for work, our job is done. No going and getting fancy hairstyles and all that nonsense. So paying too much attention to the body is a big obstacle also. So we must not forget, Swamiji says that health is only a means to an end. See, machine, if it is given to produce something. Suppose a machine is there, it produces some manufacturing item. Now, if we forget that the machine is only there to produce something, of itself it is of no use, and we keep on polishing the machine and put some nice smelling sprays and all that, it is absolutely useless. We just have to use it for what the purpose for it has been given. After that, it has no use. So body is also like that. We just have to use the body for the purpose for which it has been given to us. And that purpose is what? That purpose is spiritual growth. And when we have attained the final culmination of spiritual realization, we have no more use of the body. It is just a burden. This has to be perfectly understood. So, a good healthy body is just a means to spiritual growth. If good health were the end, that was the only aim, then Swamiji says we would be like animals. Animals rarely become unhealthy. You don't hear tigers or lions sneezing or getting a cold or something like that. So we should not forget the place, what place the healthy body occupies in our spiritual life. So our attention to the body should not be less than what it should be, but it should not be more also. That is the thing. This is the first thing, good health. Second obstruction which Swamiji says is doubt. He says we always feel doubtful about things we do not see. That is but natural. All these spiritual things are abstract entities. We cannot see them until we climb very high on the spiritual plane. Till then we must have faith. That is not in only spiritual field, but also in our external world also. Like here when I came to Canada for the first time. So I had faith. People told me, yes, go book a ticket, this flight will go, you go to Delhi to Vancouver, you get down, come to the society. So before I came, I had to put faith in the persons who are guiding me. Otherwise, how can I start my journey? So here also, in spiritual life also, we have to put faith in whom? The saints and sages. They tell us everything about this life. So having put our faith, we have to start. But our doubts will not go. My doubts vanished when? When I landed in Vancouver. Yes, this is Vancouver. So similarly, only when we experience those truths for ourselves, our doubts will vanish completely. Till then, we have to proceed on faith. So Swamiji says doubt comes to us as to whether there is any truth in these things or not. Soul, God, etc. So even the best of us will doubt sometimes. But he says With practice, a little glimpse will come, enough to give one encouragement and hope. Hmm. As a certain commentator on the yoga philosophy says, when one slight proof is obtained, however little that may be, it will give us faith in the whole teaching of yoga. Like somebody has told us a very nice pizza or something will be cooked for us. Okay. So our doubts will only go when that pizza is in our stomach. But suppose we get a little smell from a distance. So when we get that smell, oh, something is going to happen. So we will be more eager. So here also in the practice of yoga also, even little glimpse removes our doubt to some extent, and then we proceed with greater enthusiasm. But these little signs are only the means, not the end. If you just say to somebody the smell is enough, don't need to have anything. It won't do. That won't satisfy our hunger. So these signs, if they come to us, we should know that those are just signs. We should not take them for the final thing. What is the final thing? The final thing is, Swami Vivekananda says, absolute control of nature, and nothing short of it must be the goal. What is this nature? This nature is our mind and body. So he says we must be the masters and not the slaves of nature. Neither body nor mind must be our master. Nor must we forget that the body is ours, we are not the bodies. Now currently we belong to the body. The body has the fullest power over us. Little headache, little pain, stomach pain, go to the doctor, run. So it is simply making us slaves. But that should not be. We should be the masters of our body. That is the final goal. But we forget that. Most of the people are not even aware of that goal. They spend their whole life in this way. So, to them the enjoyments which they get through the body become all in all. From the birth to death, there is nothing further. Eat, drink and be merry. That's what they think that life is all about. But unfortunately, we all find that does not always happen. So for the majority of the people, that will be the only reason to eat, that will be the only reason to live. Eat, drink and etc. etc. But not for all, but for the majority, that will always be the case. We cannot help it. So Swamiji says, what is the nature of the world? He says, if one proposes to teach any science to increase the power of sense enjoyment, one finds multitudes ready for it. Thousands of people will come. You give a lecture on how to make money, become a billionaire overnight or something like that. That is what scams are all about. What is this? They are just taking advantage of the greed. One recent scam which we had before I had come in West Bengal, India, that was called the Sarda scam. So they will tell, come give us money, we will double it in 5 years, something like that. So people are so greedy, they are so blind that even if their brain tells them that it cannot be, but out of that greed they are fooled. That is the power of these enjoyments which they exercise upon us. So Swamiji says, if you teach all that, everybody will come. But if one undertakes to show the supreme goal, one finds few to listen to him. Because very few have the power to grasp the higher truth, and fewer still have the patience to attain to it. But there are a few also who know that if the body can be made to live for 1,000 years also, the result in the end will be the same. What will be the result? The body will disintegrate. You can't keep the body forever. when the forces that hold the body together go away, the body must fall. No man was ever born who could stop his body one moment from changing, because the body is only the name of a series of changes. But again, this human body is the greatest body in the universe, because only through this body can we attain spiritual growth. That is the thing. So what does Swamiji say? That now we don't know anything about our own bodies. We cannot know. At best, we can cut up a dead body and analyze it in the laboratories and all that. But still, we know very little about them. Why do we not know? Because our attention is not discriminating enough to catch the very fine movements which are going on inside. A dead body has no movement at all. So we can only go thus far with the knowledge of the dead body, no further. But through yoga, when the mind becomes subtle and enters, as it were, deeper into the body, then we realize those subtle perceptions. That is the thing. Then only we can have control over our own body. So that is the goal, that the mind should have entire control of the body. That is the thing. The body works upon the mind. Body is always reacting upon the mind. So if anything happens which I do not like to happen, I am worried, because the body is reacting so powerfully upon the mind. We have no control. So as soon as something happens to the body, our mind is shaken. The mind is thrown off its balance, because currently the body is the master of the mind. We have become bodies. That's all. We are just bodies. This has to be changed. This slavery to the body has to be got rid of. And getting rid of this slavery is not a joke. So Swami Vivekananda says it requires hard practice every day. So these things we have seen. Why practice is necessary, the obstacles to practice. Now Swamiji tells us some basic rules regarding the practice of yoga. First, he says we must practice at least twice a day. First. Then he tells us what is the best time for such practice. The best times are towards the morning and evening. Morning, when the sun goes from, when darkness gives way to light, when the sun rises, that is the best time. That is called the Brahma Muhurta in Sanskrit. And the second best time later in the day is when the sun goes down, when day changes into night. So first when night changes into day, and second when day changes into night. Those are the best times. So the early morning and the early evening are the two periods of calmness. Nature also becomes calm at that time. And our mind also becomes calm. So Swamiji says, our bodies have a tendency to become calm at those moments. We should take advantage of that natural condition and practice at those times. And of course, one thing which everybody knows, every Indian knows, even a small child knows, that in the morning when we practice, we should not eat anything before we have finished our practice. This is the first thing. Second thing what he says, second very important suggestion is, he says that those of us who can afford it will do better to have a room for this practice alone. A separate small shrine even in India now, many people who can afford it, they have a small shrine in their rooms. So that room should be kept exclusively for practice of yoga, for thinking of God only. So Swami Vivekananda says, do not sleep in that room. It must be kept holy. You must not enter the room until you have had a bath and are perfectly clean in body and mind. Place flowers in that room always. They are the best surroundings for a yogi. Also, pictures of saints and sages, etc. Have no quarreling, nor anger, nor unholy thoughts in that room. Only allow those persons to enter it who are of the same thought as you. As you means who are also of a religious disposition. So if we keep on doing this for some years and practice intensely there, then what will happen? He says, then gradually there will be an atmosphere of holiness in that room. So that when we are miserable, sorrowful or doubtful, when our mind is disturbed, the very fact of entering that room will make the mind calm. That was the idea behind these making temples and churches, etc. So that people of only a religious disposition will come. They will only think about God there. So those vibrations in that temple or church, they will be there. They will keep on increasing. And slowly, whoever comes in that place will also feel calm, will feel holy. So that we know that whenever we go to a church and all that, we feel something different. So these are the basic principles regarding practice. Now we come to a very important part. That how do these practices help us in our spiritual growth? The reason, like people tell us from childhood we have learned from our parents, don't tell lies, don't do anything wrong, don't hurt others, etc. So what is the reason behind this? These are all yogic practices only. These moral virtues come under yama and niyama, which we will study. So why? The big question is why? Why are these practices inculcated? How do they help us to get control over our minds, to purify our minds, and to accelerate our spiritual growth? So this is very important. And fortunately, I found a commentary which is simply brilliant explanation about this. So we'll just discuss it. So first, among the yogic practices of these 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, the first of these are moral virtues, which come under yama and niyama. And those are the foundations of spiritual life. As a building cannot stand without a good foundation, spiritual life can't even begin if we don't try to practice these moral virtues with all our heart and soul. Without these, no practice of yoga will ever bear fruit. Absolutely impossible. This is the thing. These are the preparation. So Swami Vivekananda says regarding this preparation, he says, everyone without exception can attain to the culmination of yoga, but it is an extremely difficult task. If a person wants to attain to this truth, he will have to do something more, much more, than to listen to a lecture or take a few breathing exercises, etc., etc. He says, everything lies in preparation. how long does it take to strike a light? How long does it, when you just match, you put a match to a candle, we get light. It takes only a moment. So Swamiji says, how long does it take to strike a light? Only a second. But how long it takes to make that candle? Much more time. Then he says, how long does it take to eat a meal? Perhaps half an hour. But it takes hours to prepare the food. So we want to strike the light in a second. But we forget that the making of the candle is the chief thing. Without the candle, there cannot be any light. So everything lies in the preparation. And these preparations also, unfortunately, are not so easy. Attaining perfection in yama and niyama, it may take a lifetime. And a lot of sacrifice. Because the whole thing is only about one thing. The whole preparation is only about one thing. Letting go. That's all. Letting go of our wrong knowledge, of our preconceived notions, of our attachment to the world, etc. That's what all our practices are about. Becoming unselfish. So, these practices have to be, these moral virtues have to be practiced very sincerely. Without that, if we think that we can become great saints and sages, absolutely it is foolishness. So, what does the cultivation of these moral virtues do? What do they do? They remove the impurities of the mind. And the impurities of the mind are our only obstacle. There is only one obstacle. That's all. The impure mind. That is like a curtain between us and God. Once the mind is purified, there is nothing to stop the realization. So these moral virtues also, yogic practices also, what they do is remove the impurities of the mind. But how? That is a very interesting, we should remember what we are going to discuss now. So for this, now we have to go to the main text of the Yoga Sutra. Then we can understand it very well. So as we have seen that Yoga has 8 limbs. Ashtanga Yoga. We will just see what they are. But first we have to learn their importance. What are the importance? So just 1 or 2 sutras we will see. I will just share that with you and then we will discuss it. This is the first one. Now I invite your attention to what is written here. So the first sutra which we will discuss, it says Yoga Anga Anushtanat Ashuddhi Kshaye. That is what is written in Sanskrit. It is in Sandhi. I am breaking up the Sandhi. So Anushtana means practice. Practice of what? Yoga Anga. All these 8 limbs of the yoga. And what happens? Ashuddhi. Ashuddhi means impurities. Kshay. Impurities get removed. Then what happens? Jnana Deepti. Deepti means light. Illumination. The light of knowledge that spring forth. When the impurities are removed, what happens? When we cannot see the sun because of the cloud, what happens? If the cloud is removed a little, then we get a little glimpse of the sun. When the cloud is removed completely, we see the whole sun. So here also, this Sutrakara means Patanjali, Rishi Patanjali, Bhagwan Patanjali, what does he say? That Ashuddhi Kshay, when the impurities are removed little, then what happens? The Jnana Dipti, the light of knowledge shines forth. And what is the final result? His final result is, he says, Aviveka Khyate. Now these terms we will come across many times, so we will remember. Viveka Khyati. Viveka Khyati, what is it? It is the final experience of yoga, the culmination. Viveka means discrimination. So, when the Purusha and the Prakriti have been completely separated by discrimination, we are completely free from the bondage of nature. That realization is called Viveka Khyati. So, these limbs of yoga have to be practiced till all the impurities are removed and we attain the final realization, which is Viveka Khyati. And as an introduction to this, on top it is written, those who can read Devanagari, they can see, Na cha siddhi. We cannot have success. Antarena sadhanam. Without sadhana, without practice, there cannot be success. It is impossible. Without cooking, we can't get food. Without walking or traveling in a car or whatever, we cannot cover distances. So here also, without these practices, there cannot be any success. This is the first thing. Now we will see that beautiful analysis of how these practices remove the impurities of the mind. So first thing is, by the sustained practices of yogangas or the different parts of yoga, the impurities of the mind are destroyed and there occurs enlightenment culminating in Viveka Khyati. This is the first thing. Now, how does it happen? This is the thing. So, now what we have studied earlier, that will come to our help. That is why we studied before in so much detail. Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha, and before that we studied the different cognitive states of the mind. So now they will come to our help. There was a meaning behind those studies. So what is that? See, we have already seen that what is the root cause of all our problems. We have already seen when we discussed the nature of avidya. We saw that the 5 kleshas, the 5 miseries which we suffer from are what? Avidya, ignorance, asmita, egoism, raga, attachment, dvesha, aversion, and abhinivesha, which is clinging to our mundane existence. And we have seen that the root cause of all the others is one, that is avidya or ignorance. Okay. Now, what is the nature of avidya? That also we have studied. So if you just recall, what is avidya? When we have discussed right knowledge and wrong knowledge, pramana and viparyaya. Pramana is what? Right knowledge. We have discussed it in detail. And we also saw that the opposite of that, what is wrong knowledge? It is called viparyaya. That is wrong knowledge. And we have also seen that avidya or ignorance is nothing but wrong knowledge. It is just wrong knowledge. In Vedanta, what does it say? That there is a rope lying on the ground, we think that it is a snake. It is just wrong knowledge. That gives rise to all the fear, etc., which we think a snake produces. So here also, because of this avidya, wrong knowledge, we are attached or we are averse to worldly things, we cling to life, we have this egoism in us. So at the root is avidya, which is nothing but viparyaya or wrong knowledge. This must be clear. And what is this yama and niyama? What is moral virtue? If somebody tells us, speak the truth always. Actually, what is he telling us? If somebody tells us, don't take things which belong to others, what is he telling us? The sum and substance of all these teachings is one: practice restraint. That is in Sanskrit, sanyama. Practice self-control. Don't do whatever your mind thinks of doing. So all these virtues, moral virtues which we have been taught from our childhood, if we go to the root, there is only one thing: self-control, sanyama. So this practice of restraint and observances of rules which yoga puts forward and tells us to do, what is the prime reason for that? The prime reason is, what does it mean? It means not to act under the influence of wrong knowledge. This is the thing. This is the main thing that you understand. All these restraints tell us only one thing: that don't act under the influence of ignorance, under the influence of wrong knowledge. Because if you keep on doing that, your wrong knowledge will never go. These practices, when they lead us to the opposite direction, what do? They weaken our wrong knowledge and give rise to true knowledge. Now the question may come, what is the need of acting? Just tell your mind, this is right knowledge, this is wrong knowledge, and attain illumination. Why go through all these problems and all, practicing truth, practicing other things, self-control, etc. Why do that? Why? Wrong knowledge can just be eradicated by right knowledge. But it doesn't happen. Why? Because if we keep on telling ourselves something, but keep on acting in the way opposite to that, this means we don't have faith in what we are telling ourselves. I will give you an example. This we should understand first. Continuing to act in a wrong way while telling ourselves what is right knowledge, if we continue to act in the wrong way, it means actually we haven't accepted that right knowledge. We are just lying to ourselves. For example, if there is a drug person who is addicted to drugs, now he will say, I know drugs are harmful, but I am still taking them. What does this mean? He is telling himself that drugs are harmful, but he is still attached to drugs. What does this mean? He doesn't have faith that drugs will destroy him. So that kind of knowledge has no meaning at all, because it is not followed up by his actions. And this hypocrisy tells us that he doesn't believe in what he is saying. So when we want right knowledge, we have to see whether we really believe in the right knowledge which the saints and scriptures are giving us. That belief cannot come to us in one day, and it cannot come to us if our actions don't match with our so-called beliefs. That is the thing. And impurities of the mind, we should remember that impurities of the mind mean not only wrong knowledge but also actions done under its influence. All that I do under the influence of ignorance is ignorance and is an impurity. So impurities means not only the wrong knowledge but also actions done under its influence and the sanskaras produced by its influence. That is the thing. So what does practice of this yoga, what does it mean? The practice of yoga means it implies action based on right knowledge. That will do what? It will destroy the actions which we have done which are based on wrong knowledge. And therefore it will lead to the development of right knowledge. Our actions will lead, not just our words. And right knowledge will eradicate slowly wrong knowledge. And with that total eradication, when that happens completely, then the sun will shine. The sun of knowledge will shine of itself. This is the thing. And just because it is a difficult thing to understand, that commentator has given some wonderful examples, practical examples. What is that? Now see, when we study yama and niyama, we will see that under yama comes ahimsa. Hinsa means harming somebody. Ahimsa means not harming anybody by words, deed or thought. Now how does it help us? How does this ahimsa help us to purify our mind? Now see how he has examined it, so beautiful. If I want to injure someone, why do I want to do it? Because I have an aversion to that person. In common sense. If I like somebody, I won't injure that person. So now inclination to do hinsa, inclination to do injury is the product of what? Of aversion. And aversion is a mental modification, a chitta vritti based on wrong knowledge. Why? Because right knowledge tells us that everybody is the soul. We are not separate from one another. If we injure anybody, we actually injure ourselves. That is right knowledge. But if we have the propensity to injure somebody, that is based on wrong knowledge. So what happens through the practice of ahimsa, through the practice of the spirit of harmlessness or ahimsa, the effect of wrong knowledge, which is of the form of aversion, is arrested. This happens if we trace all the yamas and niyamas, moral virtues, we can trace each of them like this. That each one of them helps us to act in such a way that this wrong knowledge or avidya in our minds is gradually weakened. And slowly, as it keeps on weakening, the knowledge arises in our hearts of itself. Because as I've told you so many times, knowledge is not manufactured. Knowledge is only revealed. So the commentator says, Yatha yatha cha sadhanani anushtiyante. As we keep on practicing these sadhanas, what happens? Tatha tatha tanutvam ashuddhir apadyate. Tanu, we have already discussed this. Tanu means attenuation of the bad sanskaras. So as we keep on practicing sadhana, what happens? Tatha tatha, as we progress, tanutvam. Tanutvam means those bad inclinations based on wrong knowledge, they become less and less powerful. Ashuddhi apadyate. Ashuddhi is removed. And yatha yatha cha kshiyate. As the impurities go on decreasing, tatha tatha, progressively, cha kshayakrama anurodhini jnanasya api deeptir vivardate. Deepti, the knowledge of, that light of knowledge, vivardate, the jnana deepti, that light of knowledge, vivardate means it keeps on increasing. And it keeps on increasing till what? Sakhalu esham vivriddhi prakarsham anubhavatya aviveka khyate. Till viveka khyati, till the final enlightenment is reached, it keeps on increasing and increasing. So this is the main thing. This is the reason why all these things are taught to us, and these things have also been delineated in the teachings of all the saints and sages without exception. What we are suffering from is wrong knowledge. What increases that wrong knowledge? Deeds which are based upon that wrong knowledge. If a person is addicted to smoking, he thinks that he finds pleasure in smoking. That is wrong knowledge. He thinks that it won't cause his body harm. That is wrong knowledge. The more he keeps on smoking, the more that wrong knowledge keeps on increasing. So simply telling himself, no, smoking is harmful, will not help him in any way, because his actions are contrary to what he is telling himself. So what he has to do, if he is really convinced that smoking is harmful, he has to follow it up with his actions. So as we have seen, impurities are not only wrong knowledge, but actions based on that wrong knowledge. So the hundreds and millions of times he has had a smoke, those have created impressions in his mind. All those impressions can be termed impurities because they are based on wrong knowledge. Now they have become very powerful. Just telling himself won't do. He has to follow it up with those actions to an equal degree. Then only the actions based on right knowledge will be so strong that actions based on wrong knowledge will not be able to influence him. And then only the mind can be said to undergo purification. That is the thing. So because of our wrong ideas and wrong knowledge, we have accumulated those impressions. Now we have to go back. If a person did not have such impressions, he would become a saint overnight. But we don't become. Why? Because we still have those impressions in us which are based on wrong knowledge. Now we have to counter them by actions based on right knowledge, which is nothing but, in two words, those are all self-restraint, Atma Sanyama, and becoming Niswartha, that is becoming unselfish. So all those practices of Yama and Niyama which we will discuss, so just a glimpse of this Ashtanga Yoga I can give you today. So share the photograph. So these are the Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga. What are those? Yama. Yama means restraint, self-control. That are the don'ts. Ahimsa means don't injure anybody. Asteya means don't take the belongings of others. That is Yama. And Niyama are the do's, what we should do. Asana is posture. Then pranayama is the control of breath. Then pratyahara. Pratyahara means gathering the mind from the objects. Dharana. Dharana is just pratyahara, an advanced stage of pratyahara. That culminates in dhyana, meditation. And that meditation culminates in samadhi. So yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana and samadhi. These are the 8 limbs of yoga. So we have to start right from the beginning. Of course, we will not go into detail right now, but when we study the Yoga Sutras, we can go into a lot of detail. So first is the moral virtues which come under yama and niyama. Next class we can devote to that. So let us stop today here. So some deep and very important things have been discussed. We have linked up the practice of yoga, the practice of the limbs of yoga with the philosophical aspect. That is the connection. And understanding this will help us practice these virtues with all our heart. Because the problem is what? The problem is everywhere the same thing, no? Speaking, talking, doing nothing. That is the problem with all of us. So Swamiji says in one place that 1 ounce of practice is also better than tons of talk. Tons of talk won't help us at all. But once even if you practice these, at least that will create opposite sanskaras based on right knowledge. And if we again revert to our old ways, then again those sanskaras will become powerful, the earlier sanskaras. That is why it becomes difficult, because there is no holiday here. I will take 1 month holiday and freedom from all kinds of restraints and niyamas, then I will come and do my sadhana again. No, my friend, that holiday, what you will do in that holiday, you will need another holiday to again recover from that. Like, of course I should not go further. Anyway, so let us stop here today for now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna